So next group, D-Church evangelicals. Who are they? What does this demographic look like? Why are they leaving?
So there's a word in the middle, D-Church mainstream evangelicals.
That's good.
So all of these are D-Church evangelicals.
That's great.
We call these D-Church mainstream evangelicals because this is a fascinating group because they look like the cultural Christians, majority white group, a little more female than male actually. But when you get to their orthodoxy scores, they have better orthodoxy scores than the people who still go to church. They've de-churched more recently in light of COVID and just before. But this group, almost all of them believe that Jesus is the Son of God. This group, 100% of them say that they would come back to the church today. So we actually gave an executive summary of our research to a church in Columbia, Missouri, who saw this and saw this low-hanging fruit. You're telling me there's 2.5 million people who would come back, all of them today. So they developed digital and personal strategies to identify and engage this group. And if I remember correctly, in 4 months, they had 300 new people worshiping at their church in person. And in my own personal ministry, I mean, I'll ask a few questions, and if I can realize this person is a D-Church mainstream evangelical, I'm batting 1,000 at inviting them to church because they're believers. They know they should be in church. They have a good, they de-church casually. They have a good experience with church. And so the reason this is, not only is this low-hanging fruit, I always want to say, we're not just looking for butts and pews and money and coffers. Like, by all statistical likelihood, the children of the de-churched will be unchurched. So this is a way to impact the generations, low-hanging fruit that's going to have a generational impact in the country.
Jim, so I just have a bunch of feelings right now. First off, I think a lot of Jesus followers would be shocked to know that they are in that category. And I think even that label of de-churched would step on their toes. Don't tell my mom, or more specifically, don't tell grandma that we're a part of that group, and her grandkids. And for me, that's what I feel that so much. I'm like, Jesus, your kids don't. And gosh, any kind of challenge to that person, because I'm guessing a lot of people listening right now are actually in that category.
Yeah, so I have a couple thoughts. Often when I'm talking to people, friends or people by the book, and I'll talk about de-church, and often they'll say to me, especially if in this category, just kind of like, man, that's me. It's kind of like this. I didn't realize I was de-churched. I knew I'm a Christian. I don't go to church, but I've just never thought about there is this. That's a category that I fit into that I didn't really realize I fit into. And a lot of, especially the mainstream de-church evangelicals, I'm actually sympathetic. I have 4 kids, 9 to 16.
This
Life
is good.
is busy. And I'm we have travel sports. I'm not, anti-travel sports. It's very hard to accommodate that in our culture. And so there was a woman once, this is a few years back, she said, would your church ever have a Saturday night service? And I said, well, why? I'm not against Saturday night services. We don't have one, but I'm not against it. And I said, why would you want a Saturday night service? And she said, well, we have 3 kids in 7 travel leagues, and once a month, Saturday night is open to us. And I was like, well, and we were friends, but I was like, well, let's have more of a conversation about priorities in your life and what you want to hand down to your kids is most important. And it actually was a good conversation. I wouldn't push that hard with somebody I didn't know, but it was like, man, what are we really investing in? And there are certain special people who really have D1 skills and, potential for a professional future. Those aren't my kids. Anybody with my genetics, that's not us. But so we have to really think about what are we hoping to show our kids is the most important. But it's hard, man. During COVID, when we were not worshiping, we were recording our sermons on Thursday, and I had the whole weekend off. I was like, I see, this is nice. I get it. And it was hard to go back regularly to church, and this is my job. But honestly, getting back in the rhythm, I was like, this is sweet. I'm really glad to be around God's people. I'm glad to worship in person. I'm glad my kids can be a part of it. But yeah, so I've got lots of anecdotal thoughts and stories to that end. But you talk about don't tell my mom or my grandmother, and I one of the anecdotal things that really made me want to do more research on this, I gave a 10-minute talk at a global fundraiser for a big event. And I just opened for a very well-known speaker who I did notice has been on your podcast before, well-known pastor. And he's awesome. And he did a great job. And afterwards, I had this surreal moment where I realized there's this line of people to talk to me, and awesome pastors getting coffee by himself. And I'm like, this doesn't add up. But I began to hear the stories, and I realized, oh, I'm talking about your child, your grandchild, your nephew, your niece, and there was just such pain. So I'm processing this now as the D-Church person, as the parent of kids, as a D-Church Christian, but also as the experience of those who have gone to church their whole life, but their children and grandchildren don't.
We'll bring them back. You already mentioned 100% would be willing to return if they were invited, if they were reached out to. Anything more there?
I just think we've always seen we've tended to see inviting someone to church as a relationship killing thing in the conversation. But it may be with people who have experienced real church hurt, and maybe we should listen before we ever try and do that. But if we meet somebody who says, yeah, I used to go to church, I believe in Jesus, I got out of the habit, I know I should go. But if we meet somebody who says, they know they should go to church, they're a believer, life's gotten busy, they've moved, other priorities, it really is a life, it's a relationally building conversation to say, well, why don't you just come with me? And I've just been so blessed by the times I've been able to have that conversation. And people have come and said, man, thanks. We've really been out of the habit. And I'm just so thankful you would invite us and have lunch with us after.
Hey crew, it's Adam from The Conversation. I'm so glad that you've tuned in to this episode. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you go and click the subscribe button, whether it's on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or on Pando, so you don't miss a single episode of The Conversation. Also, I need to give a huge shout out to these partners. These partners help make this episode of The Conversation possible. They're organizations that I know and trust that I want you to know about as well. Have a great rest of your day.